Welcome to our lens test series. We're trying something new, and this is the first one. So we're going to be testing lenses and commenting about it. And if you want to leave any comments on the chat, please do so. My name is Bianca, and I'm the owner of BECiNE. We're a camera rental house here in Culver City. We rent cameras and lenses. And today we're going to be testing the BLACKWiNG lenses. They're T-tuned. And we're going to be testing them against the BLACKWiNG SKiNS, which it's a skin tuning kit, which are front and rear elements for the BLACKWiNGs, and they're fairly new. We haven't seen any tests of them yet, so I'm really excited. I want to thank Ernesto Lomeli, who's here with us. He was the DP who shot this test here at BECiNE. I actually was not here on the day, so I'm really excited to see this material. And we also have Corey, our lens tech, who will be commenting with us. So let's go.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we shot this on a Venice 2 at full sensor. And here we go. So the order of the test is the lenses in T-tuned, wide open, and then SKiNS wide open, and then at a T4 in both of them again. So there's every focal length is covered 4 times basically. And things we're looking at here as a baseline is chromatic aberration, flare characteristics, and color. The lenses themselves aren't supposed to change too much, so this is kind of one of the things we're looking at, like the shape and color of the flare.
Yeah, we started with an LED flashlight, trying to show the difference between a cool and a warm light striking the elements and seeing how that kind of reacts and how the elements reflect different colors of light back at the sensor.
So here we have a SKiN wide open, the 27, with a 300 watt tungsten Fresnel trying to flare the lens. And then we have the background bokeh, and just seeing the overall shape of them. And if anything happens, basically, I mean, the BLACKWiNGs are kind of known for having kind of funky characteristics and really unique vintage-inspired flares, as you can see right now.
Yeah, the flare of the skin seems a bit more rounded and controlled in a way in this shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it seemed like?
Yeah, I definitely agree. It does have like a wide variety of colors in the flare too, in both tunings.
So this is us looking at them at a 4, which I know some people would probably shoot wide open the whole time, but a 4 is kind of a more usable stop in full frame for narrative work. So it's I thought it would be good to shoot the test in an environment where we thought we would use it in real life. So you see a lot of purple, a lot of magenta fringing in the shape of the flares.
So the skin takes that off a bit, right?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, there's just not a lot of literature. It's just it's like more warmer, nuanced, golden-y red flares in theory. And in the test I do see some, but it's not just like a blanket overall. It's not like the same look. Like every lens is flaring a little bit different. And you can see here, there's a little less magenta. Now there's a little bit more green from the LED flare. And with the tungsten, it really brings out, I think, that front element coating maybe. And you're starting to see a lot more oranges and reds. The green is still there, but at the same time, there's a giant Fresnel in the background. And you could see that little magenta dot that was in the center of the frame.
Oh, this is a beautiful focal length, 47. So the actual front element, does it have a bit of a red color?
Yeah, both the front and the rear element have a very strong red appearance to them relative to the normal T-tuning. The T-tuning, if you look at it, has a more of a magenta and a blue flavor. But when we put in the amber skin tuned, they have a very red glint on them, looking at the both front and rear element. And the rear element is the one that generates the most color changes in the flare, because that rear element has light bouncing off of it and redirecting back into the lens and then back at the sensor one more time. And with T-tuning, you get a lot more blue in the flares, and you can actually see a lot more rainbows along the edges of the flares as well.
Yeah, which is really kind of the special part of it.
Yeah.
But personally, I'm not the biggest fan of the purple. Sometimes it's nice, but when it's over somebody's face, for some reason, like those cool blues and magentas, I just don't like them over people's faces. But that's just personal preference.
Maybe maybe the saturation and the color of those flares is not the right combination of colors with the color of like the blood behind someone's face.
Yeah.
The color of blood.
So here you see those little, those two red little dots that are in front of the denim jacket, from the flare in the background.
Oh yeah.
But you notice the bokeh in the back throughout all the different lenses hasn't really changed very much. Like it still stays pretty much the same.
So the bokeh is very consistent, right? It's mostly the flares and like which color that goes.
And then if you notice, there was none of that lateral chromatic separation in the background, which we'll talk about in a second. Flare-wise, it looks like on the 37, it's not giving you those. It's kind of more of like a contrast wash or a veiling flare.
Yeah, veiling flare where it's bringing.
Ooh, look at that.
Contrast away.
That's a nice little. I like that goldeny orange kind of vibe.
I like that too. I personally prefer that more than the blue, but I know people that love the blue.
Some people love the blue,
too.
yeah, right? It's dealer's choice, and that's kind of the cool part. It's just there's so much glass out there.
So there's no right or wrong. It's just whatever fits best for your project and your personal preference.
I feel like the amber tuning flares do blend very nicely with the skin tones of all the models that we have here too. They blend nicely.
It's nice that we have different skin tones too. They all look beautiful.
We got them all.
This is the most blue flare that I've noticed in our flaring tests so far.
And what do we have lighting-wise on those faces?
We are actually using ambient light, and then almost everything else is an aperture 600 through a dome. We're not really doing anything quite fancy. We just brought our levels to a nice middle ground. And then what is actually making it look really cinematic is just that Fresnel in the background that's giving that beautiful hair light, right? That's just makes everybody look so good. But if you do notice, all the flares, no matter what lens, it's they do wash out contrast pretty quickly in all of the BLACKWINGs. Like contrast is gone. I know it's also a flashlight right into the front element, so but it does disappear very quickly.
Yeah, I'm noticing those flares in the center frame on Gillian's jean jacket, and those are quite beautiful shapes. And
so
they're from a source that's pretty far back.
So I do like that orangey red. It doesn't feel like a hyper blue. Yeah. Like there's still a little bit of blue in there, but and now I mean the tungsten is just by far my favorite. Right. For anything, I think I got to go back to just flaring with little halogen bulbs for everything.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it looks very cozy and warm.
It's super organic, right? Like it does feel a little vintagey. And the flare comes in from the background, and it's holding really well with this coating.
And that same flare that's coming from that tungsten light in the background on the T-tuned is more of a subtle but blue color. It's not hitting as harshly on the sensor, I don't think.
And I mean, that is a gorgeous flare. It's a big flare.
Yeah.
But, it's not picking up any of those. It's picking up a few of those warm tones from the tungsten flashlight, but nothing like the skin kit. Have you noticed a big difference between the stops and the flares?
I feel like
nothing dramatic, right?
The higher the T-stop, it does feel like the flares kind of take up more of the screen. But yeah, I feel like more veiling. It's easier to do a veiling flare when the T-stop's wide open.
Yeah, like the full wash across everything.
But I feel like the flares become more circular and shapely at a T4. So
you notice in the background when I was focusing there, what I was trying to do is find that chromatic aberration, that separation.
Yeah,
if you notice,
in the highlights, right?
in the highlights, and you could see it on the 47 when we
It's on
focus.
the flashlight too sometimes, not right now. Or like
Yeah,
when it
there's
was
like a
getting-
little fringe around like the very bright parts, and that's
Yeah.
kind of you could kind of see it there, right around the
Mhm.
highlight of the barrel down the flashlight. That little bit of purple fringing,
Mhm.
it's kind of a characteristic of the BLACKWINGs.
Yeah.
In the T-tuned, it is definitely obvious, having now looked at some footage that I've shot with these lenses. But in with the SKiNS, it's mitigated.
Mhm.
It looks like they addressed it. I think maybe I'm not the only one that noticed it. But it's still there.
Yeah.
It's not gone.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a characteristic that I noticed since the first time that I saw the BLACKWING T-tune.
The
when-
purple bluish separation in the heavy highlights.
Yeah, on the highlights.
Honestly, when I'm projecting, it's the first thing I notice. Like the chromatic aberration is pretty uniform throughout the whole thing, where there is like an echo of blue around every highlight zone.
How was it when you projected the SKiNS?
With the skin, I didn't actually notice much change in the projection, but on sensor,
wow.
it looks different. It's like it's not as the magnitude of the chromatic aberration feels different. Like it's not as significant in the frame. But yeah, that blue chromatic aberration is pretty uniform throughout the whole set of BLACKWINGs. It's very unique. I don't see that in many lenses.
It's the vibe.
It's the vibe.
I mean, and these focal lengths are pretty unique, right?
The 37, 47. I mean, this is in full frame at this open gate sensor size. They are beautiful portrait lenses. They're starting to move into it. This is, I mean, right now when I'm doing doc work on some BLACKWINGs, usually our wides start at a 47, and they just feel very three-dimensional. I really enjoy them.
Yeah, this 47 is really catching my heart. It's really nice.
But you notice there, like it wasn't a super warm flare. It's bouncing off some element somewhere inside,
Yeah.
and it's still
Yeah.
white.
Yeah. It's one of the more desaturated flares that we've noticed, I feel.
But that looks gorgeous.
Yeah, that's our tungsten flare. Yeah, that's really nice.
This flashlight was a lot less bright, so I had to hold it a little bit closer than I did with the LED.
It's just an old school mag light, right?
It's
Like
exactly,
the
yeah.
little technician flashlight.
Runs on 2 little AAAs.
Yeah, I like the colors of the flares.
So here we started to come in a little tighter, and obviously I can fit everyone nicely. Ooh, look at that! That's kind of like the calling card of the BLACKWINGs. These beautiful
Like a full color
halo,
spectrum.
rainbow. I mean, that is absolutely gorgeous, and that's from a 300-watt light, 20 feet back in the background.
And like I would pay attention to that going forward on the skin tune. I noticed this feature specifically in the flare a lot less. The full spectrum of color in the flare on like the rim of each flare.
I love this rainbow though. It's like childhood.
I know it's because you don't see it very often, but I mostly see it on the 57. I think it's actually more a characteristic of that one focal length than just as a set in general.
Mhm.
Yeah, true.
Interesting.
But look at that. These little halo-y, otherworldly kind of ethereal flares. I don't think I've seen anything like this in like a modern produced lens.
Mm-mm.
And there's our tungsten, yeah.
Yeah, it's the
That's-
tungsten on still the T-tune lenses.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous.
You can
at that.
create really whatever you want depending of which light you use, which angle
yeah.
you come from. It's
Absolutely.
amazing.
Our patient models just waiting for us.
Shout out to Gene in the back on the Fresnel light.
Oh, that's a nice wash. That flare is beautiful.
So that just kind of took the contrast away without having that hard bite, hard edge that the T-tune had.
And then I tilted up there to see if I could catch more of it, and it didn't seem to make a big difference. I just wanted to make sure that it was going right down the barrel, and
Slightly more
it didn't do very
harsh
much.
flare resistant, it seems.
Yeah, because that's the one that we had the thin rainbow flare
Yes.
on the non-skin, right? And we didn't really see that here.
Yeah.
Not yet. And let's see with the flashlight.
There's a lot of color in there, but the transitions between the colors are not as distinct. I feel like it's a more gradient approach to the colors in the flare.
Yeah, we did lose that magical thin rainbow halo, didn't we? It's still pretty. It's different, but it's
more like a classic flare on older coatings of element. That's what it feels like.
That 57 was really unique, and maybe it's something we can look into to see if it's the rear or the front.
It's definitely going to be the rear element. Like if I remove the rear element and put the T-tuned rear element on, but I leave the skin front, then we're going to have that rainbow flare back. I did a test to see.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So that's the beauty of these lenses too, because you can really custom make it for the style that you want, because now the front and rear element are replaceable. If you're looking to have more of that rainbow color in the flare, you can keep the original T-tuned rear element. You don't have to commit to the full look. You can experiment with both.
I wonder if it changes colors a little bit since it's that warmer front coating.
I assume so. I think the front element contributes mostly to the change in contrast that we see and the change of overall color and tune, versus the flare being mostly responsible by the rear element, would be my understanding.
It is so weird seeing something that feels so organic and kind of mushy and grainy from a lens. Like I feel these lenses have this like almost grain characteristic to them. Like they don't. It doesn't feel like you're looking through a window. Like you look like when you see some glass, where it's just better than real life. Like this has a grit to it for some reason.
Well, still like resolving very sharply, uniformly.
Yeah. The sharpness is there, but it has like a texture to it, which I can't say about lenses
really
very
nice.
much.
Yeah.
There's a texture to it, right?
Especially contemporary lenses. You can't say that very often.
And I mean, they're all beautiful, but this does have it almost feels like you're adding film grain. Through a lens, which is super weird, right?
And we're looking at three people.
Yeah, and we're just looking at three people.
There's not a lot of three dimension, but it feels very cinematic.
So did you see in the background the little lights?
Yeah, as you change focus, it's called longitudinal chromatic aberration, where you're on either side of critical focus of where the object is. One side could appear, for example, more magenta, and the other side could appear more green or yellow tuned. So, kind of depends.
It had a bit of more like yellow around the highlights,
which
right?
I think feels more natural, right?
Yeah, instead of the purple, for sure.
I mean, not that the purple is I mean, it exists, and it's not the only lenses that have this. Especially if you go more vintage, you do see it a lot more.
Yeah. I was just projecting the Leica Rs today, and that's a good example of something that has heavy purple chromatic aberration in the longitudinal format. So when you're changing focus, you can really see it grow and shrink.
But I do like these warmish flares, because it's not just like warm. There's like a magenta tone to them, but there's like a lot of orange and like deep red, and I like them on faces. I don't mind them crossing somebody's face when it's that wash of orange. I don't know why. But the blue just kind of feels like it's a sci-fi movie, you know? The orange still feels like it could be like a burst of sun, or like it provokes that like natural kind of highlight kind of memory.
Yeah, I think if your light source hits that rear element, you're going to get a really hard, you'll get a really hard circle of that color and element in the back. Like it'll appear on screen as a really solid flare that's a strong circle, depending on what color it would be, if it's amber tuned or T-tuned.
And here you could see the 77 wide open. Not everybody's sharp. If I'm focusing to Jillian, who's in the center plane, we have to kind of pull to them forward and back. But you see that nice flare coming in.
And the flare is really cool in nature too, so it's like it does feel sci-fi. Now that you say that, it's like a lot of what I see.
Yeah, but there's that rainbow again, and as we get longer in the focal lengths, the flashlight has to be more and more in frame.
Yeah.
In order for it to pick up.
Farther and farther
Yeah.
Yeah, when it's in the very corner, that's the really nice rainbow there.
Yeah, which you can hide. You could build a rig for that on a map box, on an arm, to have that there, which is really, really nice.
You can have it or not, depending on what you want for your story, right?
But you notice it's like in the end, it's still the people still look good. Like they don't disappear.
Even Gillian's eyes in the edge of frame right now, like it's resolving with high sharpness, but it's kind of milky soft.
Right.
It's now Abe's eyes are there now too.
Yeah, you never quite see focus pop in these
Yeah.
lenses.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah, and on the T-tune version of this, we saw a little bit of a rainbow. That
Yeah,
you
there
don't
was a
really
little
see
bit of a
on
rainbow,
this
and
one.
I really like that separation. But I guess it's kind of weird because you kind of have to choose between that rainbow and these magenta-y kind of high
Tunes.
contrast highlight issues.
Yeah, sometimes they appear orange too, like a really unique orange that I feel like does blend well with most skin tones.
So here there is just a general flare coming in from the Fresnel in the back. It's just gently washing the contrast away. You can kind of feel it. It's very, very gentle. Normally you'd have a grip come in and give you a lenser and you'd have to tell them to go away.
It's on the left corner. Yeah.
So the veiling flare started a little bit earlier there. It started on the right edge.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
And at this point I was kind of aiming to make a little cone with the flares in the bottom right hand corner.
So I'm really curious what would have happened with our Fresnel if we would have gone with, something harder. Like if on a job that was not a 300 Fresnel, but like a big Lico with a lens, with a spot hitting us far off in the background, just diving deep down the barrel of the lens.
So the veiling flare now appears to be like a golden color, right?
That's
Which
really
I
nice.
really like.
That's
yes.
really nice.
Yeah, which is fucking for a 77, that's kind of what you want on that portraity single kind of vibe.
Yeah, reduce the contrast, in a pretty way. Unique
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, it's giving me like holiday vibes and cozy. It's really
It feels like a hug.
amazing.
I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah.
Feels like a hug.
And the texture is really nice. I'm glad you pointed it out, Ernesto. 'Cause
Right, there's
I
something
hadn't really
to them,
noticed
right?
How nice the texture
Whenever I
is.
shoot with the BLACKWINGs, one of the things the clients always say is that like they feel painterly.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything feels like a painting. It feels like you're looking at something like old art.
Yeah.
And
that was with the T-tune. Now
and
that
that was
we have
with the T-tune, with the
skin,
SKiNS. We'll just have to play with them and see what happens. Like everything, you kind of build muscle memory to how a lens reacts, and you kind of start lighting for it and against it, like playing up its positives and lighting to not get yourself into trouble for other things. But that's the one thing I didn't like, when every now and then I would get something like that with a heavy highlight.
which is
Like
that's
which would be
very
like a car
specific.
driving up,
Yeah.
or like a kick from like a skyscraper window,
Yeah.
or like I mean, I know that it's hard because especially if it's a heavy point source in frame, you can't flag it, and so you could throw some. There's not much you can do about it, and I don't like that across the face. I do like that rainbow separation I'm getting, but sometimes getting that heavy blue across somebody's face, it just doesn't feel.
Yeah, I think it's a really unique and cool color, but I don't think it blends well with most skin tones. I think it's a
No.
it's a good clashy
No.
color. It's like
Yeah.
looking at a color wheel, you wouldn't put those two colors together.
Now, can you make it cool if you have control of it? Yeah, I think you can bring that flashlight at the right angle and get that beautiful rainbow.
Yeah.
But like if you're out in the wild and you're in the desert and there's like a mirror and you're trying to flare it and it turns into that, that's not a happy place for me.
Yeah, and
But for other people, it could be cool.
I wouldn't rely on targeting that color in post either. 'Cause
No.
there's so much.
There's nothing there.
Yeah.
And there you're seeing that goldy kind of center flare. I like.
Oh, yeah, it's cute.
Yeah, and the light is hitting that rear element. That rear element is like shining.
Is that what that is?
That's the strong circle right there.
That's the rear element that we're looking at right now.
Because it's at the center point of
Yeah.
all the other circles.
There we are trying to burn the sensor.
Yeah. It's the sensor screaming for help.
But if you notice, no matter what, the bokeh has stayed uniform in all of it. Like it feels like you would be able to match all of this.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like you could just mix and match a lot of these depending on the look you want for the shot.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it would cut. Like they cut well together. They're not.
Yeah, for different scenes, right?
Yeah.
Like you could do.
Ooh. But see, it's the characteristic
Yeah,
of this
that's really
optical design, that
bluish.
blue
but that's
wash.
the
It's
skin.
mitigated now
Huh.
more with the skin though. Before it was overwhelming. Now I feel like they brought it down a little bit.
Yeah, like if you were to show me this, I actually would have guessed that this was T-tuned.
Me
This
too.
is the
I was
flare.
surprised that this one was the skin.
Mhm. And I am seeing more of that color, like rainbow, the whole rainbow within the deep flares too.
Ooh, oh yeah, I
Which,
like
to
that.
me, that's kind of interesting because that's
Yeah.
like antagonistic to some of the other things we've noticed in the skin set.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the thing about the BLACKWINGs. I feel like every lens is kind of treated as its own individual
Yeah.
thing. Like it's a set, but it's kind of a set of unique lenses put together. You
Right.
know, like they all have their different characteristics.
Yeah. If you read the marketing on the website, they actually like straight up say like this lens specifically was inspired by this antique lens that we liked. So like every lens is modeled after its own source material.
And that
it's
107 is just delicious. Look at that.
It's really pretty. So Corey, how long does it take, more or less, to go from T-tune to the skin?
If everything goes well, I can do the front element in about like 5 to 10 minutes. The rear, sometimes because it's a smaller element, is a little harder to access, and it can be pretty recessed too. So I might have to take off the PL mount, and worst case scenario, it could take like 30 minutes, I think.
So this is not something you can change on set, out on the field. We gotta do it here at the rental house.
Testing.
Have to do it at a rental house. You can
Yeah.
test it at a rental house, but the second you take off like any element of a lens in a place that's not
Clean room.
like clean room, like I have a really strong air filter in my lens room,
Yeah.
and even with that, just removing one element, a bunch of new dust. I had to remove an element, put the new one on.
Look at the fringing on the flashlight right there. Sorry to interrupt.
With the
Wait.
purple in the corner.
Yeah, the
right?
purple in the corner.
It just summary, like so
There
much
it
dust
is.
gets into the lens, so you have to be really careful when you're doing this, and you don't want to do it without the right tools either, because you can slip and really scratch an element.
So let's say if you need both looks on the same day on a location, you would probably have to rent 2 different sets,
Yeah.
being that one is T-tuned and one is with the skin tuning, or
Mhm.
maybe you could choose a focal length that you're
Sure.
gonna want on the skin for a specific scene or something
Yeah.
like that.
Especially with this video, you can use this knowledge to kind of understand, like, maybe this focal length would be the best to target the flares on, where we can choose, like, the rear element could be the amber tuning, so you don't have to worry about strong rainbow flares, or, like, whatever you want to target, we can work with you to find the best solution for your project.
It reminds me back in the day we used to carry around an old Cook 20 to 100 for when we had to do like that flary portrait shot. It would just be at 100 wide open, and it would just flare like nothing else that existed. But back then, we were mostly matching with like super speeds. There was like there was a prime set and a set of lenses. There wasn't that many.
We
many
have that.
differences.
We still have that Cook 22.
Yeah,
here,
I
right?
think I think if anybody ever gets a chance, they should test it out at 100 millimeter. Ooh, that is the classic flare lens.
Maybe that's our next test. We have it.
So here I was checking that longitudinal aberration, and it seemed to be pretty under control.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You can see Gillian's hair kind of moving through it.
And if
really
I remember right,
Oh, yeah.
from the lens from the focal plane to talent, we were about 7.5 feet away,
yeah,
maybe 8 feet.
Consistently 7.5 feet.
So this is a 107 at about 7 feet. So it's a nice size.
So it looks like with the 107, shining the light right down the barrel, you're not going to get hard shapes with your flare, wide open, but you're going to get mostly veiling flares. So that basically means the front element is kind of being lit up by the light, where the light is spreading through the element and not into the lens. You can kind of see the blue chromatic aberration all around the light source as well.
Yeah. But I don't see it in the background so much,
Yeah.
No.
which is I'm okay with.
I wonder a brighter light source maybe brings it out.
Yeah. But I mean, as far as distance and brightness, that flashlight's quite bright.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might see it more on like a blown out window if you have it in the background.
Right.
So, and then the tungsten flares coming in. I'm surprised on these longer focal lengths. It's like you really gotta dig deep to
With
get
the
those
flares?
flares. Yeah, you really got to be on axis.
Yeah.
Like here, it's holding contrast fairly well. It's washing out the tiniest bit.
They all look really good. I
Yeah,
must say.
skin tones overall have been really consistent. Like all the skin tones look nice.
And you're saying it's Amanda and Gillian and Abel. They're part of the BECiNE team.
Yeah, I know they
Thank
look
you
like
so
professional
much.
models, but
I know, they do.
I really thank them for sitting there and
Yeah.
being amazing.
And then another shout out to our intern Jean in the back on the flare.
And Corey doing the
Oh,
front
That
flares.
is my hand.
I mean, that is a heavy blue, purple flare. But I do like that
yeah.
separation of the tungsten.
strings.
Yeah, that is gorgeous.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that in many places.
My understanding is that is actually more of a sensor flare.
Oh, so that could be
That's
the
the glass in front of the sensor on the Venice 2. When the light source has streaks coming from it directly,
interesting.
that's more of a sensor thing.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
It's almost when you put a light on the sensor, you can see those things
Yeah,
on the
that's
quite true.
sensor, and then you could see it in the image now.
So I already feel like that Fresnel light in the background is really doing a lot more contrast work.
It is, right? It
than
is.
the T-tuned ones. On
It's
this
catching a
photo
little more.
at T4. Whoa.
Interesting.
Cool.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. I love how you slowly ease it in.
I had a monitor for me at this point.
But this is nice, you know. Like it's not that overwhelming blue.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's really
neutral.
nice.
It really brought it down. And look at the
Yeah.
aberration on the flashlight itself. You
It's
don't have that
gone.
fringing. Yeah, the fringing
Yeah.
is gone. So it looks like they set a look, but either purposefully or not, they did mitigate some of that fringing on the super high contrast situations.
Yeah.
And again, some people might like that fringing. Right?
I know.
You never know.
No, that's true. But to my eye, this feels more natural.
Yeah,
Agreed.
both tunings have their
Agreed.
place. It's just what flavor speaks to you for the
I
project.
know those beautiful rainbow flares are kind of magical. They really are.
This 137, the depth of field is so shallow relative to what we've been looking at.
But you see the longitudinal
Yeah.
chromatic aberration.
Mm-hmm.
You saw there was like a moment where the flashed blue. Wow. But I love how this is resolving. It's like very, very three-dimensional. Like her hair has, like even though it's out of focus, it's not a blur. Like
Right.
it does have that painterly
Mhm.
feel, right? You could see that texture that people talk about.
Their skin just looks so soft, while still like having a lot of detail in it. It looks just like milky smooth too.
And we had no filtration, right?
No.
filtration.
No filtration. This is clean.
And I really love the way the light shines through Gil's hair too.
Yeah.
And hits the sensor.
Nothing like a Fresnel backlight. Right?
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah. If you look at the lights as we pull focus on them, they'll glow blue and then glow
Mhm.
yellow. That is
Yeah.
longitudinal chromatic aberration, and that's something a lot of contemporary lenses and lenses throughout history haven't really corrected for. There's very few lenses that are willing to spend. It comes down to the quality of glass you're putting in, and to work against that and make that disappear, you have to spend a lot more money.
But it'll also
in
affect the
design.
overall characteristics. So
Sure.
maybe it's worth it. You know,
Yeah.
maybe you just know that's there. You know,
Yeah.
you can't have something that does everything right.
Yeah,
And
like every
that's funky and yet it flares in just the right way,
Yeah.
and it doesn't. There's no fringing. Like sometimes you got to give something, right?
Yeah, lens manufacturing is a compromise. Every feature you try to target and fix or solve for, you're going to create another problem, or where you're losing like the amount of
Texture,
light that's coming through,
characteristic.
losing characteristic. The T-stop goes up, so you're making sacrifices, and that's just the nature of the game.
You see way less fringing on the tungsten units too. So
Yeah, I think it's also the light source, the color of the light
Yeah.
source. I think those LED
being
flashlights
daylight.
are like 6,000 or
Yeah.
8,000 tungsten,
So
8,000
a
Kelvin.
lot of it is about the color temperature then.
Yeah.
The
But the
fringing.
truth is, in a lot of our world, there is a lot of daylight LED sources. Like
Right.
it just happens, but that is why we went with a tungsten alternate.
And I think with this shot, you kind of start to notice we were working a lot with the natural light of the room, which there's big skylights, so it's important that we notice like clouds did come in and out. And also with the 137, this is the starting point of the T-stop is T2, where before this we've been at 18, 19, so the image is looking a little more dark here because we try to use consistent ND.
Still there, but it's a little finer.
Yeah. The magnitude of the chromatic aberration stays a little more confined and tight to the light source. Doesn't spread as much.
For 137 for the win. I mean, as far as portraits go.
Yeah. And then not even speaking of flares, just overall color change. I really like the warmth that the front element provides for the SKiNS series. Like I noticed a lot of difference in Gillian's jean jacket, our model in the center. The color of the jacket really changes shot to shot between the skin tune and the T tuning. And it's a nice warm color that we're seeing.
So there you see the fringing still.
Yeah, and it's the skin, so I feel like a lot of it is from
I don't
which
think-
source, which color source
That's
you're
quite
using.
true.
Yeah. Really nice job, guys. I'm super happy you shot this. It looks truly beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's also nice to see so many different skin tones and hair types and no hair types.
Yes. Well, we're all about diversity here at BECiNE, so it's great to see all the different skin tones.
Yeah. My hopes are people see this and kind of understand at least a little bit the differences between the tunings so that they can see a creative route for their project and understand what each element can do when you choose to do that tuning.
Ooh, at a 4, that's quite nice.
The CA goes down a bit.
Quite a bit.
And even though their skin tones are so different, like it all matches.
It does
right?
all match.
And it's and you're just using one light. You don't
One
have
light source,
different
Each
lights
one,
for
yeah.
each person.
You can
which
see it
is
in their eyeballs
amazing.
right there. Yeah.
So we're hoping to do more of these tests with other lenses. And we would
Ooh.
love to hear, what do you want to see next? Which lenses you want to see next?
It's funny because at a prep sometimes you just quickly throw up a lens and test it, or you're on a job and you just order a lens to test it maybe for the next job, or like a movie that might be coming up or something like that. But to like really take the time to go through all of them, because this took a while. This is not something you whip up in an hour, right? This
Yeah,
takes
so how many
time.
hours did that
What
take?
did it-
Did-
4 hours?
We spent the first hour and a half trying to figure out
Yeah,
why our two
matching the-
Sonys didn't match.
Yeah, matching sensors. Yeah.
So we ended up shooting with one camera and just doing more lens swaps, which, helped us get a more consistent result. So we're actually comparing nicely.
And that's something, for everyone to be on alert. If you are using two cameras, make sure the cameras are completely matching. If not, the test
Yes,
will
and
not.
you definitely, and it's not that common that they come out of the box matched.
Yeah.
That's why it's a real privilege to have a DIT. So appreciate it when you can.
Absolutely.
So maybe next time we can do it in like 2-3 hours.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
It'd be more time saving if we could do it in a more controlled environment where we weren't relying on natural light as much. So we'll see what we can do to make that happen.
Yeah, because that background we have a skylight.
I know, but I liked
Yes.
having all that depth, because
Yeah.
usually in lens tests
Yeah.
you don't have that much depth. And
Yeah.
that's what makes it feel so cinematic, to be honest with you,
Right.
is that they're not just like
Yeah,
against a
they're not in
wall or
a
a
small
background.
room.
Yeah, and that's
That's
why
true.
it has this like big picture feeling because
Right.
they're in a giant room.
Yeah,
You know, there's
Is-
something to be said about that.
that is a good point.
Well, it
Like-
looks like we just got ourselves a lot more work in our plates, everyone.
How many different sets of lenses do we have? It's
I don't even know.
yeah. Do we need to count?
But this is a really great test.
Mhm.
I'm super proud of the team. Thank you guys so much. So the 137 is the longest one we have, right?
Yeah, this is where this set ends. We did not test the 20.7 because they do not have a tuning kit for it, and also I think at the time they paused production on the 20.7
They were
for
doing
a
some sort of
redesign.
rework, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
As soon as that's available, we'll make sure it's on offer though. As soon as it gets to us.
I really like that. That
That's
flare.
cool. That's cool.
Now we have the tungsten coming in, right? Let's see.
Oh yeah.
The golden color there. And then
But it
ooh.
goes red. Look at that. That went right down the center, didn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. But I feel like that highest saturation flare that you see is often the rear element kind of doing that light work. So when I get the flashlight closest down to the center of the barrel of the lens, that's when it's really getting hit.
That's really nice. I
Yeah.
really love that.
Takes us out of that.
The skin with tungsten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Super fun.
Yeah.
If you please leave some comments, everyone who's watching, and if you want to ask more questions on the chat, we might be able to answer them. And we look forward to sharing more tests with you all. And thanks so much. And subscribe to our channel.
Yeah. Let us know what lenses you want to see next.